So on Friday of last week, if you were in the main square in Krakow, you may have noticed a protest, a demonstration that took place. It was organized by the Belarusian House Foundation. They were protesting the political situation in Belarus, some upcoming elections there next month, actually. Strongman, I guess, is the best name for him, although there's another name we're going to learn soon, for Alexander Lukashenko, who's been in power for 26 years in Belarus. 26 years. I think he's won his last few elections by 99% of the vote, 98%. It's a joke, of course. It's a de facto dictatorship. It's a terrible situation there. And we've got a very interesting guest joining us here in the studio to talk more about the situation in Belarus. Natalia is with the Belarusian House Foundation, based in Warsaw, but she's based here in Krakow. And she's here to talk to us about what they do, the organization, and just help us with a chance to learn about Belarus generally. Natalia, welcome and thanks for joining us.
Hello, and thank you so much.
All right, let me start with the obligatory general question here. Why don't you tell us a little something about yourself, the Belarusian House Foundation, and what the aims of that organization are?
All right, thank you. So I live currently in Krakow, and my journey with the Belarusian House Foundation started in 2017.
You're from Minsk, by the way, yeah?
Yes, that's right. I'm from Minsk myself. I've been living in Poland for 5 years by now. And in 2017, I took part in the Erasmus Plus program, which was organized by the Belarusian House Foundation, where we were learning a lot about the Belarusian minority here in Poland, and this is how my journey with the Belarusian House Foundation started. And this foundation was registered in April 2012, and it's basically the only place where the Belarusian life is concentrated in Warsaw, and it's the largest center of Belarusian diaspora. And this organization and this institution is supported by different other organizations, especially financially. And the Belarusian House supports civil society of the Belarusians, and it's as well as it's a Belarusian information center, which builds relations between Belarus and Poland. The House also takes active part in struggling for human rights, supports development of Belarusian initiatives, organizes different seminars, workshops, and different youth exchanges, such as the one where I took part in. And over the past 7 years, the Belarusian House has implemented many significant projects, which were funded by the international organizations and also Polish authorities.
Can I ask you, do you know something about maybe the size of the Belarusian community in Poland? I know it's kind of hard to say because there are lots of Polish people who have a Belarusian ancestry, maybe, and they've been, the borders. It's a very close-knit relationship between Belarus and Poland. But in terms of people who have Belarusian nationality, how many of them are there in Poland?
It's hard to say for me, actually, but based on the information from the protest, for example, which took part recently in Warsaw, almost 3,000 Belarusians came just to the protest. So you can imagine how big actually the diaspora is, including the fact that maybe not everyone was able to come to the protest.
Sure. So it's probably I would estimate in the tens of thousands. Would you say it's more than 100,000? I'm guessing here. I don't know.
It's hard for me to say, so I'm bad at counting the numbers of the people. So
this is not math class. Exactly.
Yes, right.
Well, it's substantial, whatever the real number is. So is it fair to say that the Belarusian House Foundation, in addition to promoting Belarusian culture and whatnot, are they essentially... is it a political organization as well, kind of pushing for change in Belarus, or to what extent are they involved politically?
It's absolutely a non-political organization. I would say it's a non-governmental organization, and the main aim of the organization is to educate. So it's an information center, and also to include different youth projects. So basically, the main aim is education and connecting Belarusians that live here in Poland, as well as creating the connection between Belarus and Poland. And we try to avoid any political topics that appear. However, of course, we do support the political prisoners and people who are repressed, because this is, of course, very important for us.
No, wait a second. You say you're not political, but what about the demonstration, the protest in the Rynek on Friday? That was very political, right? It's about the upcoming elections and whatnot, yeah?
This is our position, I would say, because we as Belarusians, we want to show who we are. We want to show the whole world that this is important. We want the whole world to pay attention to what is actually happening. So it's not not. I would not say that this is a political thing that was happening, but more of showing who we are and showing our position and our disagreement with what is happening.
As I mentioned earlier, there are elections in about a month in Belarus. Before we get into the elections, can you give us your impression, your description of the political situation in Belarus generally, and is it fair to describe it as a dictatorship? And if not, what would you call it?
Of course, it is a dictatorship, and even though officially it's not said this way, but actually it is, as the current president is already 26 years governing Belarus, and this is too much.
Alexander Lukashenko, yeah?
Yes, right. And our first and last fair elections were in 1994, when Alexander Lukashenko was actually elected. After that, no elections were fair, as, let's say, he was choosing himself.
How big an element of the current protest was spurred on by his response to the coronavirus? I heard he lost a lot even of his own supporters from the way he tried to handle the crisis and insist it didn't even exist. And can you just give us a bit of a flavour about, how this all exploded? Because, I have seen so many stories about Belarus in the last few weeks, and, that's not something I've seen in the past, being a news follower. So it seems like there's something huge happening at the moment.
Could you please say it once again? Do you mean that, including the situation with the coronavirus, he lost support, right? Yeah. I would say yes, because seeing the experience of all other countries that were introducing, and still some countries do have this quarantine, and in Belarus there was absolutely nothing done. And apart from that, it is forbidden for the doctors to say officially how many people are actually sick got sick with this disease. And for those doctors who actually tried to say this openly, they got imprisoned or they lost their jobs.
Because I was reading that this is the first time you've seen mass protests before an election, a crucial difference, as in people are trying to mobilise and, like you say, kind of get that voice, as in this time it could be different. I mean, is there a credible candidate that's going to stand against him? I mean, who are people rallying around? Is there a figure, that's kind of, become the leader of the opposition?
It's hard to say that there is one public figure that would be actually the leader, because there were some leaders, but even before they became candidates, at the point of gathering signatures, they went arrested. So now...
Noticing a trend here.
So basically, this year is a lot different because the repression started even earlier than before, than all previous years. So even now, at the moment of gathering signatures, there's already so many political prisoners. This is insane. There's over 100 people who are repressed, and it's in the form of fine or prison. And actually, there are 22 political prisoners that are officially confirmed, and some of them are also confirmed by Amnesty International.
Very good.
Wondering why I know we're jumping all over the place here, and that's fine, but why does Lukashenko even go through with the formality of elections? Why does he make everybody pretend that he was voted in and got the support of the people? Why doesn't he just say, you know what, no elections, I'm staying here? Why even pretend with the elections?
Good question, because I have no idea.
I was just thinking, that is a good question.
Going back to Dave asked about opposition parties. Are there any opposition parties that exist and function in Belarus?
Yes, of course, there are several opposition parties that exist. I'm not able to provide all the names, but for example, one of them, the Belarusian Christian Democratic Party, and their leader is Pavel Severinets, and this is my good friend actually, who is now in prison, and he's in prison for such a long time that he won't even be free at the moment of the elections, at that date. So this is really crazy and insane, and he's one of those political prisoners confirmed by Amnesty International.
Sorry to interrupt.
Sorry to hear that. Big shout out to you, Pavel.
Is becoming the head of an opposition party, is that your ticket straight to jail? Do you get arrested immediately if you become...
Sounds like it.
If you become the head of an opposition party?
You're just being followed by everyone from all sides, and whatever you do, you can be imprisoned for anything, like for whatever they think of, or whatever the government creates a story for you, then like literally for anything.
Will they be released after the election, or is it like that, or are they just kept in prison indefinitely?
Indefinitely, I would say, because officially it's like this a particular sum of days, and theoretically he will be released, but we never know, because while he was already in jail, another court happened without him being there, and then he got and some other days, like plus 15 days, which all gather together for, I'm not sure, but it's about 100 days or so. So basically, we never know whether they create another court, another story for him for staying again in prison for even longer. And knowing that he is a writer and he writes books, and now it's forbidden to him to write books. He's not even given water or a mattress to sleep on. I would say that this comes to medieval times being tortured, because officially there is no pandemic in Belarus, but any parcels are not accepted to jail because of the so-called pandemic, which does not exist. So this is so insane and crazy. It's indeed unbelievable.
So if it sounds like the government strategy, if you want to call it that, is basically to eliminate other options. And if anybody seems to be getting a real political following, if they're the focus of political support, remove that person from society, put them in jail, and take them off the ballot. That's how Lukashenko operates, basically.
Yes, basically that's true.
I got to ask, let me direct a question at Dave here. And Dave, we like to argue about the European Union and everything, but I got to ask, look, Brussels loves to point the finger at Poland and talk about democracy and problems with how the government operates. Where's Brussels on Belarus? I know they're outside the EU, but where is the outrage coming from Brussels about the things that Natalia describes here?
There has been supportive statements, I'm pretty sure, from the EU about what's happening.
Outrageous. It's unbelievable.
At the moment. Unfortunately, it's not a member of the EU. It falls under Putin's sphere of influence and has done since the end of the Cold War. And Belarus make a lot of their money retailing gas, discounted gas that comes in from Rosneft, from Russia, and therefore Putin has always had that huge lever over Lukashenko, and it's not an issue the EU has ever felt it can influence sufficiently. But I was going to ask Natalia about, have you always felt, that Belarus are a little bit ignored on the international stage,
I would not say that we're so much ignored, even though, of course, there's probably not enough information about our country, and maybe nobody even cares about a small country in the Eastern Europe. But there's a lot of help coming, for example, from Poland, especially during the pandemic, where there are trucks with help, literally with different medicines and equipment went to Belarus as a help from Poland, which was, of course, a lot appreciated by us. And I would say that Poland really does a lot for help to us.
There was a point I saw made in one article about the coronavirus and how it tied into the politics, and they were saying that, and I was curious to get your take on this, in Belarus it's saying if you're young and ambitious, the deal was you could leave. You weren't blocked from leaving the country, and everyone who stayed behind had to kind of accept this crap situation living under Lukashenko. But now, because of the coronavirus, nobody can travel to Poland to their jobs, and that's fueling some of the political situation.
I would say that actually during the coronavirus, even more people tried to leave the country because they saw what is happening, and they created, they came up with really crazy ideas of how to leave the country, just because it was impossible to stay there. And actually, even though the borders were crossed, there was still a possibility to come to Poland for work or for any other reason, and then you just needed to stay 14 days in quarantine. But basically that was it, and then you can go further to work, to whatever reason that you came to Poland. And I know a couple of people who actually did this during this coronavirus situation.
Let me change the focus a little bit. We'll come back to the elections in a minute, but let me change the focus for a second. I'm curious about the damage done by the isolation caused by Lukashenko's regime in terms of standards of living and whatnot. I'm curious about, maybe you can give us kind of an insight into some salaries. It might give us an idea about the kind of standard of living people can enjoy in Belarus. I know there are a lot of different factors that influence standard of living, but when it comes to the salaries of let's say a teacher, a bus driver, a factory worker, how much money do people make in Belarus?
Basically, a young specialist gets $250 per month. And then like the average salary is not even $500. So it's really crazy.
So roughly, let's say 2,000 zlotys, 2,000 Polish zlotys, maybe.
Maybe, yes.
You're doing pretty well if you get the 2,000 zlotys. That's a good job, yeah? Okay. So somebody working in a service capacity, somebody working in a shop assistant in a restaurant, they might make half of that.
Kind of, that's right.
Wow. Well, you can see the incentives that are created for people, especially younger people, to leave the country. Among people like yourself, for example, your group of friends, when it comes to, let's say they finish university, when it comes to starting their professional careers, are most people looking outside of the country, or do people still consider starting a professional life in Belarus? How does that look?
It actually depends. Really depends on many factors. I know that a lot of people actually left their universities in Belarus and then went to study somewhere abroad, including me. I did not finish a university back in Belarus. I dropped it. And some people try to finish the university at home and then to leave, but then they have to confirm their diploma, which is quite complicated, and that's why they stay, or they just go for another degree, for example, for master's degree already in Poland, or at some point, I have a friend who is now 40-something years old, and she just came to Poland at this age. So these are absolutely different reasons why people leave the country and why they go somewhere else. There's no trend. But as for the young people, I would say that most of them come to study because it's easier than further to move around here in Europe having a European standard diploma.
Do you think, okay, this is a potentially very stupid question here, but I'm going to ask anyway, because that's what I do. Potentially stupid question. Do you think that everybody in Belarus, especially younger people, do you think everybody's aware of the huge gap, the huge difference in the standards of living between what they experience in Belarus and what even people in the less affluent part of Europe experience? I mean, everybody knows what they're missing?
I think most people do, but I can't say for everyone. I just know what I was missing when I was back at home, when I was searching for a job as crazy, and it was really hard for me to find even during the studies back at home. It was like more than 5 years ago. And so maybe those people who work in the IT industry, they probably are doing well because we have actually a quite developed IT industry back in Belarus. But
I think probably like Ukraine, like half of the young people there are like computer engineers and IT scientists, very well educated, very kind of qualified workforce probably. Yeah.
I don't know about Ukraine, but for Belarus, yes, sure. And if you know the World of Tanks, it's actually a Belarusian game. Woo-hoo. If you didn't know.
I know it now. Well, I mean, it sounds like a situation where, that Poland was in maybe a decade ago, maybe more, where bright, ambitious, talented young people, they look at their options, and leaving the country is usually the better option. And it creates this brain drain, a talent drain. You can stay in Belarus and struggle for the 2,000 zlotys a month, or you can come to Poland, or maybe better to Germany, to Sweden, to France, wherever, and earn 3, 4, 5 times that doing just, I don't know, working in a kitchen, working on a building site. And people just say, look, I need money and I'm going to make better money there. Is this seems to be the standard situation in Belarus?
Unfortunately, yes.
So the people who stay behind and try to make a life, they're doing, it comes with a price tag. They're missing a lot when it comes to developing their skills and, their financial future and whatnot. Harsh. Let's come back to the political situation. Tell us about the result. We were talking about this before we started recording. There was a poll that was somehow organized that they tried to measure the amount of support for Lukashenko, and it came up with a very embarrassing result. And now, as a result of that, we're not allowed to do any more polls.
Yes, right. There was a kind of a survey conducted by one media. I'm not exactly sure which one. And the current president got only 3% of support. And now it's called Sasha 3%. Just because of the survey, and now it's officially forbidden to conduct such polls in any media. And whenever someone says back in Belarus, Sasha 3%, this person might have troubles.
Can you explain the Sasha part to us?
Sasha is the short name for Alexander.
Yeah. That's the same in Ukraine, right?
Yeah.
With the elections, what's the date of the elections in Belarus?
It's 9th of August.
Okay, if you had to make a bet, and I'm going to force you to take a position here. If you had to make a bet, Lukashenko for what, 5 more years? Is it a 5-year presidential term in Belarus or 6? I forgot.
5.
I think it's 5. Are we looking at another 5 years of Lukashenko or not?
Hard question. I have absolutely no idea because everything can change and everything changes within days. So I don't even know what's going to be tomorrow, what's going to be next week.
But when you say change, in the Belarusian reality, it's either Lukashenko or the fall of the government. There is no other option. There's no opposition candidate that's going to beat him in an election. Those seem to be the only 2 choices. 5 more years of him or complete revolution.
Well, that's what we are all hoping for. It's a complete revolution that will basically save the country. Otherwise, we might be in such a trouble that we will might even become a part of Russia. Like, we never know, but it's super scary now. And the only way out for us is basically the revolution.
You know, speaking of revolution, a few years ago, we had this in Ukraine. We had they called it the Orange Revolution. People took to the streets demanding change. I don't know much about the reality on the street in Belarus, so you tell us. Can you imagine Belarusians taking to the streets in their thousands, tens of thousands, demanding change? And if they did, what would happen?
Oh, well, actually, now, after all these situations, I can imagine this. Maybe previously, after the previous elections in 2006, 2010, maybe this was not this possible, as all the protests were actually stopped by the government, by all the police. But now, the only way out for us, if the police takes our side, not the government side, and then they protect us, not beat us, then this will work. And this is all what we're all hoping for. And basically, when all the repression started, even before the elections themselves, because previously they were after elections when people were not were showing their disagreement with the result. Now the repressions are even before the elections, and people are angry, people are tired, and even though people are arrested, they still go to streets, they still even now go to protest. So as I see it, I hope that this actually will happen, that even more and more people will go to the streets, and then the only way out for us, if the police and all the government takes our side, and then this is the only way how we can beat this regime.
I think you've totally put your finger on how a regime falls there, and it can happen so suddenly. And the police interaction, if they refuse to carry out the orders they're given, if they refuse to murder and lock up, any more of their fellow citizens, that's the moment it could all fall apart for Lukashenko, and I pray and hope that's what happens.
Has Lukashenko done anything to kind of acknowledge that people don't like him, and to try to kind of cancel that opposition by, I don't know, government giveaways, relaxing some restrictions, any kind of sign that he knows that there's growing opposition to him, that he kind of reacts to it by saying, okay, I'll give you this, or is his attitude still basically fuck you?
Well, actually, whatever he says, in most cases, this doesn't come true. He might want to say this or that, I will do this and that for you, but then he doesn't do it, and he does something completely opposite. Well, there's only one thing that he actually did when the 31st so-called roadmap was supposed to be signed with Russia, which would actually mean having the same currency with Russia. So basically, this will mean that we will be eaten, let's call it this way, by
vassal
Russia.
State. Yeah.
Yes, and there were so many protests, and there are of course many repressions and so on, but this roadmap was not signed, because if it would have been signed, then we would be in big trouble. Maybe Belarus would have no longer exist on the map. But since this roadmap was not signed, so this is only one thing that I can remember that actually was done. But 1 out of 100 makes absolutely almost nothing in the scene.
You mentioned Russia earlier. Dave mentioned Vladimir Putin. Lukashenko seems to have there's like a bromance, we call it. There's like a man crush between Lukashenko and Putin. They seem to be pretty good friends. I think Lukashenko is probably more enthusiastic about Putin than Putin is about Lukashenko. But at the highest levels, it's very clear that Lukashenko loves Russia, wants to be Putin's best friend. What can you tell us about the average person in Belarus and their attitude towards Russia. Yes, you share, in many ways, a common history, Soviet Union and all of this, but to what degree do you think the Belarusian people really want to be integrated with Russia?
It's hard for me to say, because from all the people I know, they do not want to be integrated with Russia, but it's hard to say for all the people since no surveys were conducted and
you're not allowed to ask.
But
well, she's right. There's literally no data because you can't trust anything.
Let me change the focus again because this is interesting to me because, just among my Polish friends, I was talking to my wife last night about this, Belarus right next door, so many cultural, historical ties to Poland. But for a lot of Polish people, I think the good majority of Polish people, Belarus just is a kind of like a blank space in their minds. Most people don't have a personal connection, whether through work or through travel or through friends or what it is. It's there, again, right next door, but people know nothing about it. And I want to change the conversation. Let's talk some positive Belarus here, because you would talk about the problems. Yeah, you've got serious problems. And like Dave says, we all hope for the best. We want to see a change. But let's talk some positive Belarus here, because you said earlier that people don't care about this country on the edge of Eastern Europe. I don't agree. Belarus has a lot to offer, I'm sure. Let's look forward. Let's look into a theoretical future where there's no Lukashenko and things have changed in Belarus. And I got to think, in this age of Ryanair and cheap travel and so many people looking to go to a new destination, there's a lot of potential there. Just like Ukraine, I keep comparing it to Ukraine, a lot of potential. Okay, you don't have the beaches, you don't have the mountains, but I'm sure there's a lot of beautiful countryside, so much history there. Give us an idea of, again, the positive side of Belarus and what you have to offer as a country to people who've never been there.
All right.
Big question, I know. But
I will try to cut it short. Basically, in the medieval times, we were the strongest country in Europe. It was called the Grand Duchy of Lithuania, and then later the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth. So we are actually Europeans. Historically, we have been Europeans all the time. And even though at some point Russia wanted to destroy this, wanted us to forget who we are still Europeans. And for example, each city, not each city, but a lot of cities had the Magdeburg Right, which specified the independence of the city. And every city had a market, just like we have here in Krakow, a marketplace. So this is something very important, I would say. And as I said, one of the strongest, or maybe even we used to be indeed the strongest country in Europe. We have a lot to say, and we have a lot in common with Europe. And this is what I would like to say, that taking into consideration that hopefully one day Lukashenko will pass away. I don't know, go wherever else, to Mars maybe, wherever. Hoping that then I have this little hope inside me that we will come back to being a strong country in Europe and being a prosperous country. A lot of people actually want us to be in the European Union, or at least closer to Europe, in case we just remain an independent country. And what else?
Well, what are the must-sees for a tourist to Belarus? Like things people have no idea. It's an amazing city, amazing countryside, amazing something.
What's Nesvish Castle?
There must be some cool things to see there.
Yes, of course. Like as you mentioned, the Nesvish Castle. There's a Mir Castle, and this were the belongings of the Radziwill family, which was they were magnates, and they were really rich, and they did a lot to our country. And there were many more castles which were unfortunately ruined by so many wars that were on our territory. But still, there are many beautiful cities in western and eastern Belarus. My favorite city is Grodno, which is close to the Polish border.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm, right. Since it remained almost untouched, and it super shows the history, and it's a really nice place to walk around and to see also the Grodno Castle.
I think Belarus has a lot of Europe's last primeval forest as well. Just like, some of it's in eastern Poland, but Belarus is 50% of the country is forest, really old forest. Yeah.
Yes, that's also true. It's in the Brest region, and it's called the Belarusian Pusha. I'm not sure how exactly you say that in English.
There must be some amazing places, especially for outdoors activities. Campers. There must be some beautiful landscapes.
Yes, right. Even though we don't have mountains, we have a lot of lakes, and these are very beautiful places to see. Also, there are different historical places which show actually how the culture looked like, how a typical village used to look like. For example, it's called Strochice, or there's a place Dudutki where it shows basically the culture, what people used to do back by those earlier times, and a lot of handmade things. And we are super proud of all the handmade stuff that we produce. So that's what I
also want to ask, just before we go here, tell us about Minsk. I've never been there. This is a big city.
I'm looking at Google Images here. It's handsome. It's got some nice old buildings.
Some incredible history there.
Some of the squares are a bit Soviet, but
it's got some recent history too. Maybe not so much. But Minsk, tell us about the nightlife scene or the young people scene, or just what's it like to live in Minsk.
What's it like to live in Minsk? Just the regular capital, I would say. Unfortunately, a lot influenced by Russia again. But yes, it is very Soviet because it was destroyed completely after the Second World War, and only 4 buildings survived. 4. Yes, it's wow. One of them is actually the Opera and Ballet Theatre.
Wow.
The National Science Academy, and there are 2 more. 2 more of them. It's a fun fact that they were all created by the same architect. So, as a fun fact about Minsk,
wow.
But
you could be a tour guide. You've got a lot of good facts there. Very, very impressive inside. And it's quite a big country for 9 million people. I'm looking at it beside Poland on a map here.
Yeah, it's not small.
It's not a small country, and 9 million. It would suggest a lot of open spaces.
A lot of open space for sure.
Unspoiled countryside. That forest, 50% forest. Is that true? I mean, that's a lot of forest. I'd like to visit Belarus after
let's
hearing
go.
about it.
Do you know...
what's the national drink? He into the vodka there as well.
It's called krambambula.
Oh, sounds good. Tell us more.
They will drink it.
You will like it.
Damn right I will. I'm to the pub straight after this.
Something like vodka, but it's something more traditional and more handmade. It's another drink is like handmade vodka. It's called samagonka. But we also have the balsam, which is the herbal drink, which is also very strong. So, and that's my favorite.
I'm sure they're all strong, yeah.
Yeah, but basically I don't drink vodka, so I can't say anything about those drinks, but balsam is a strong but a good one.
Okay. I like the name, balsam.
Belaruskidom.eu is the website of the Belarusian House Foundation, again, based in Warsaw, yeah?
Yes, that's
based
true.
in Warsaw. If you want to learn more about who they are and what they do, it looks like their Polish and English pages are under construction. So if you can read the Cyrillic alphabet, there you go ahead. Otherwise, you'll have to wait a little bit before their other pages get ready. Natalia, thanks very much for joining us, and we've all got our fingers crossed for a great future for Belarus.
Yeah, that was fascinating. Thank you.
Thank you for inviting me. It was really nice to stay here with you.